I started looking into machine learning recently, and one of the areas that I started looking at was Azure's Machine Learning Studio. Now, I come from an area where machine learning is not too, I don't know too much about it, so this was a great way to kind of get introduced to it and get started working on it. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory, I hope. But your web services for the experiments, notebook, data sets. Now, these are where you can upload your custom data sets. So, what data set I'm using right now, I'm going to actually use because it's all sampled inside of Azure. But you can upload your data sets. You can use CSV files, Excel, SQL, a bunch of different options. And then trained models. Obviously, right now I have 2 trained models that are already there, but we'll go through it and show you how to get to that point. So back at experiments, you can click the beautiful new button at the bottom of the screen. Here you can either use one of the samples that they actually already have, which is our fully constructed trained models, or what we'll do is just blank model. Well, that's pretty boring, but that's it. So up here you can go, you can name it whatever you want. Demo model. So that's just naming your model so you know exactly which one you're talking about. Now, like I said, I'm starting with just a preset data. I am going to use the automobile price data. Well, I'm sure we can all relate in some way. So with that, you can actually visualize the data. So this is the data that's already preloaded. So this is just an example that Microsoft's included within it. You can take a look. As you can see, there are some columns missing data. There's even, go further down, some rows that are missing pieces of data. So it's a great way to start looking at normalizing your data and how to create your models. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean. So you get your empty data, or you get your big data set, you got to clean it. Not all fields, I'm sure we've all gone to registration sites where, you know, email is not required or company name is not required. All of that data means that somebody doesn't have to fill it in which case, when you're looking at a trained model, the computer, you don't want really the computer to draw conclusions on pieces of empty data. So we will do selects. So from here, we can select data. Now, as you can see, there's an error already telling me that something's missing. Basically, all it's looking for is this connection. And your information. So now that I've connected the 2 pieces of data, this column is actually already filled with all the columns that are in the data set. So I'll go with the rules. I'm going to start stripping out columns. So I want to start with all of the columns and then strip out certain ones. So I'm going to exclude column name, and when I start typing, good old IntelliSense. So normalized losses was the first column that we saw, whereas basically all the data was missing. So, and that's it. So now we can click run at the bottom, give it a second or two. And now if we actually go to result data set and visualize, we can see now that the column's missing. So that's one, it stepped into one part now already. So now it understands that that column's not required. We don't care about it. Next thing I'll do is I'm going to continue cleaning further, and I'll clean the missing data. So that's going to take care of any columns that, or sorry, any rows that are missing specific pieces of columns. Again, you connect it on up, and here, so the missing value range, the value range ratio, and then this is your cleaning mode. So what do you want to do with it? So in this case, I'm just going to scrap that row. So I'll remove the entire row, and there we go. Now after I'm done this one, I'm all done, and it's literally already gone through all of my data, stripped out a column I don't want, stripped out rows I don't need. I click play just to see, but didn't need to do that. So clean data set, and you can visualize again. So the great thing with this is you can actually visualize your data as you're going through each step of the model generation. So if you look here, really hard because I don't remember what the ID was, but you'll notice that all of columns, all of the rows now have correct data. So now we've got a good chunk of data. After that, this is where it becomes now your thoughts. How do you want to train your model? How do you want it to understand what needs to be visual, what needs to be analyzed? So from that, if we just view the data set again, if we look at all the columns, right? Normalized losses will affect the price. Number of doors may affect insurance more than price of the car, but engine location, wheelbase. What about length, width, and height? Is somebody gonna really get out a measuring tape every single time they're trying to price a car? So is that piece of data really that important? So again, when we come to this, we can actually select the columns again. And now instead of stripping out columns, we can actually start with no columns, and we can include make. We can include fuel type, body style, what else? Engine size. Come on, who doesn't like engine size? Horsepower. Come on.
All-wheel drive.
And then we'll just pick city miles per gallon. Plus, we want to also make sure that we pick the one that we actually that are looking for, price. So again, I'm not going to run this time, but I think you'll believe me when I say that it'll strip down to only those columns that we need. Now, the part of machine learning you have to realize is that I have a data set of 100 rows. The machine's going to start learning on all that data, but really we also want to test it. So we want to be able to sit there and be like, use 50% of the data, and then the other 50% I want you to test yourself on. So you're going to learn from 50% and then go off onto the other spot. So again, we can do that. Split data. It's just that easy. And again, connect the lines up. Actually, connect the lines would help. And then you get to specify how much. So this is your ratio. So right now it's 0.5% or 50% of your data. So 50% of the data is being split between your test and your learning set. So I'll up it to 75 and go from there. Now comes the part where you kind of need to learn what's going on. You need to learn a little bit further into the models. So Microsoft has, I'll actually get rid of this and show a very, very large column, if I can find the column. Of course, it's going to be right at the bottom or something like that. There it is, machine learning. So initialize model. So inside of here, there's 2 in there. There's 10 in there, give or take, 10, 15. These are all algorithms. So these are pre-built algorithms that Microsoft has for you, where you don't need to do any coding. You can just assign these types of algorithms. You can look up each one of these. There's plenty of documentation about what each one of these does, because I'm definitely not going into all of them. But in this case, we're just going to go with linear regression. So this is going to be our model. From there, we need to train it now. And again, simple as find it somewhere in here and train. Now each one of these you'll see is, so untrained model, it's what the input's looking for, and data set. Well, over here we have data set 1, data set 2. Now if you remember, this split data was separating it into test and evaluation data, or learning and evaluation data, I should say. So data set 1, that's the data that's going to be, that the machine's going to use to learn, and data set 2, well, that's your test data. And we'll use the second set of data at the end. So we, again, will connect all the dots. And then, now that it's training the model, you want to tell it what it's trying to predict, what it's trying to learn how to figure out on its own. And obviously, that's just price for this scenario. So, if we give it a quick run, these examples don't take long, so they shouldn't be very long to run these. It's also nice, you can see the check marks as it goes through. It's training right now, so it may take a little bit longer than just the selecting. There we go. So, this is the trained model. You can visualize it again. So, basically, these are all the stats regarding what it's understood. Hard to understand, but you can kind of break all the data down. So, now we have our trained model. That's the model that we're saying, that's how it's going to figure out all the data that we want. Now, we can score it. Pretty sure we can score it. There it is. Put our trained model in. And then this is where our second piece of data comes from. If I actually select it here. So now basically what it's saying is you have your trained model and the data that we've split out as your test data, now run it through as a score and find out what the results are. So run one more time. I swear this is the slowest part, just waiting for this to run. Okay, there we go, that was great. So now that we've scored the model, we can actually visualize again. Now this is going to give us an information about what was thought. So this is our test data. This is the data that we have split out from the separate. It didn't train on this, but it did use its predictions. So as you can see, you got your price. This is what the price that was in the data set. And this is a scored value, which is the value that it predicted. So it predicted 10,126 in comparison to 11,259. Close-ish, but still off. Once you get to this point, you can go back and make changes. So you can come back in and say you want to add in, I don't know, which one did we choose? We did body style. Fuel system? Sure, why not? Just because. There. Now I've just changed it. Now I can rerun. And hopefully the results are better. So now we're constantly just modifying this right now, giving it new data, stripping more away. It's kind of a give and take. You have to kind of evaluate which columns to you think are going to be the most important. Again, you don't want to give it, I don't know, tire type. Well, tires expire. We go through tires how often? Do you really think the type of tire on the car is going to be valued?
You deleted price by accident.
Did I?
Thanks for telling me. It was more fun this way.
And doing these lets you know who your real friends are. Hopefully I've added it back in. I was trained. Yeah, I was trained. There we go. Well, past training. And now that we're finally finished scoring, we can now go in. Oh, our price actually went down for this one. It's 11,259, now it's 9,885. So we're actually going in the opposite way. So we're actually giving it bad data that the machine doesn't need to worry about. So from this point, you can kind of play around with the columns, the data, the values. Now, you can also evaluate the model, this is where it kind of comes interesting. So you can evaluate the model, and basically what that's going to do will give you your mean value, your average values. So it's going to basically look through all the data that it got from the score and compare the scored value with your price value. Then it's going to give you basically your averages. Of course, I finished talking before it finished working. I'm running off my phone, so this is going pretty quick. So again, evaluation results, your charts, your mean absolute errors. This is the errors between the value, the differences between your errors. So you can do that. Now, one of the great things you can actually do about this as well is, say, instead of splitting the columns like we have, I want to see what it's like if I just duplicate it, but don't select specific rows. Luckily, copy and paste works. So you can actually create, using the same point, you can actually drag and reconnect the data. So we've done all of this up here, we've cleaned the missing data, we don't ever have to reproduce that. Basically, we're just doing this. But now that we have two different models, we can actually evaluate them side by side. So now we can run multiple models side by side, who's better, who's more efficient. And this is going to take a lot longer than just running one. So. But you can actually notice that it'll do check marks along the way, right? Evaluate model, which needs both models to be completed, is going to be your last piece. So, and here we go. There we go. Now we actually have side-by-side metrics. So we can see the difference between Model A, Model B, and Model C if we wanted to add another one. So it's a great way to set it up is to clean first and just worry about your data set first and then start going and applying your changes to it. So basically you've just created a trained model. That's all you need to do. Now the hard part is, okay, well great. Now what do? I have a trained model. What the heck do I do with it? Luckily, in 2 steps, you can actually create a web service. So Microsoft has literally set up a beautiful, why aren't you open?
Because you made a change, you have to.
Oh, right.
Just select evaluate model, and you can just say run selected.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have to go through everything.
Yeah, it's more fun. It's got a pretty little circular thing.
Sure.
Look how beautiful it is. No, it's good. That's kind of disappointing. There we go. Now, so this here is our training model. Basically, that's our way of, we're setting it up where this is just for us to evaluate to see the data coming. So now we can switch it to a predictive. So hit that predictive service. Now you'll notice it automatically starts transforming your data or your model. Problem is when it comes to a web service, well, you already have a trained model. You don't need the linear regression object. You already have a physical trained model. That's what you want. You don't need to evaluate, right? You don't need all that experimental work. So it strips it out and creates this. And then one more click. If I run it, always wanting me to run.
Tell a joke. Tell a joke.
My presentation. Come on.
So, I'll ask a question. What's the cost? Where does the cost come? Importing the data or running all of the runs and adding?
Again, so right now I actually have a free service. So I think it was somewhere here. Here with the pricing. Well, of course, disappeared. Price is more when you create the web service and have it constantly pinging.
Okay.
So that's more of the cost. So you can have a free web service as long as you stay under a certain amount of usage. You also have, I believe, 10 gigabytes free storage with the free account.
Yeah.
So that means you can upload your data set or create your models. But right now I've been running a web service since last night. Nothing to it.
Cool.
So now we can deploy. And again, we're waiting. That's the great thing. You don't really have to do much. You don't have to know stuff about model or about machine learning. It's really just click and play for this. There, I've just created a web service. I have a hosted web service up and running. I can test it here if I want. Otherwise, who doesn't want to create an actual client? Well, if you click on the General tab up here, it'll take you over to the service management. I just found this yesterday and it was really helpful. And if you go over to Consume, here you go. Here's an entire web service already created for you, passing in dummy data that calls out to your web service using your API key and your service address, and will return the exact content you want. So I have this implemented, and I'll show you what comes back, but they already have the code for you. You don't even need to do anything. So I just implemented the code. If you call the API, so here's your result set. This little piece of string is your result set. So you get your make, body style, horsepower. These are the columns that you've selected to be in your trained model, and then your score labels. Now I have complete dummy data, so it being negative, that's just because I just filled it in with random data. So, but that's it. You created your first machine learning model, you create a web service, and you called it already. So after that, really, you get further deep into it. And the great thing about this is it can actually run both Python and R scripts. So if you create your own scripts, you can actually run them yourself through this. It's another one of the options where you can drag into place and you can actually run your scripts. But really, for the people who aren't too familiar or just getting started with machine learning, this basically sets it out and you can learn as you go. So, yeah, that's it.
Are you implying that Azure Machine Learning is a child play game?
Wow.
In a sense. They try to make it as easy as possible. I get head shaking from the Microsoft employee in the room. But really, again, machine learning it's been around for a while, but it's starting to take off a lot quicker. And the problem with it is a lot of it is really complex math problems. And if you don't have that side of it already, then how do you go about doing it? Right? So you can create a web service with knowing absolutely nothing really. Just getting started and following some guides. Obviously you'll have to get better at understanding what data you need and all that kind of stuff, just so that your models are a lot better prediction. But that's it. Any other questions?